The galaxy was old. It's very old. And in all that time, the Galactic Concord had ruled without question. 12,000 years of power, 12,000 years of control. They decided who could trade. They decided who could travel between stars. They decided who mattered and who did not. When humanity finally built ships fast enough to leave their small corner of space, they sent a message to the Concord. They asked for friendship. They asked for trade. They asked to join the great family of civilizations that spread across the stars. The Concord laughed. Ambassador Thexerin of the Velith Dominion was chosen to deliver the answer. The Velith were ancient beings with skin that glowed in different colors depending on their mood. They had been part of the Concord since its earliest days. They considered themselves better than most species. They considered humans to be nothing at all. Thexerin traveled to Earth's solar system with a fleet of 100 warships. It was not necessary to bring so many. Humans had only 12 ships capable of traveling between stars, and those ships were slow and weak. But Thexerin wanted to make a point. He wanted the humans to understand their place. The meeting happened in orbit around Earth. The Thexerin's flagship was larger than a city. The human vessel that came to meet him was smaller than his personal quarters. Admiral Lena Vasquez represented humanity that day. She was a woman of 53 years, with gray in her dark hair and steel in her eyes. She had commanded Earth's first deep space mission. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. She had buried friends and watched stars die. Nothing the universe threw at her had ever broken her spirit, but even she felt small as she stood in the observation deck of the Thexerin's flagship. Surrounded by alien guards 3 times her size, the ambassador's skin flickered with blue and purple light as he spoke. His translators turned his words into English, but they could not hide the mockery in his tone. Humanity requests membership in the Galactic Concord, Thexerin said. This request is denied. Lena kept her face calm. May I ask why? You are too primitive. The ambassador walked in a slow circle around her, studying her like she was an insect. Your species has only traveled between stars for 47 of your years. The youngest member of the Concord achieved spaceflight 300,000 years ago. You are children playing with toys you do not understand. You learn quickly, Elena said. You are violent. The Sorna's skin turned red. In the past century alone, your species has fought 2 global wars. It's countless smaller conflicts, and you continue to point weapons at each other even now. The Concord does not welcome species that cannot control themselves. Every species has conflict in its history. Not like yours. The ambassador stopped in front of her. He was tall enough that Elena had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. You are young. You are violent. You are primitive. The Concord has no place for you. Go back to your little world and stay there. Elena's jaw tightened. And if we refuse, if we continue to explore? Thexerin's face flickered with something that might have been amusement. Then you will learn why no species defies the Concord. But we are not cruel. We will give you a gift to show that we bear you no ill will. He gestured, and the observation deck's windows shifted to show a view of space behind the fleet. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Mountains of metal floated in the darkness. Twisted holes. Shattered engines. Broken weapons platforms. Pieces of ships from a dozen different designs, none of them human, all of them dead. 17 billion tons of decommissioned vessels and equipment, Thexerin announced. The Concord was going to dispose of this material in a nearby star, but we thought your species might find use for it. Perhaps you can melt it down to make... ... He paused, and his skin rippled with laughter. What do you call them? Eating utensils? Elena stared at the graveyard of ships. She felt anger burning in her chest, but she did not let it show on her face. She had learned long ago that anger was a weapon best kept hidden until the right moment. Thank you for your generosity, she said quietly. Thexerin waved a dismissive appendage. Return to your world, human. Grow up. Perhaps in 100,000 years, when your species has matured, the Concord will consider your request again. The meeting was over. Elena was escorted back to her small ship. The Concord fleet departed, leaving behind the mountains of scrap they had dumped in Earth's orbit. For 3 days, Alina did not speak to anyone. She sat in her quarters aboard the research station Prometheus, staring at the floating graveyard through her window. Her crew worried about her. Some thought she had been broken by the humiliation. Others thought she was planning something dangerous. They were right about the second part. On the fourth day, Alina called a meeting with Earth's senior military commanders and the heads of every major research institution. The meeting was held in secret, with encryption that would take alien computers years to break. "They think they gave us garbage," Alina said. Her voice was calm, but there was fire behind her words. "They think we will melt these ships down and make forks and spoons. They think we are stupid, primitive, weak." She pulled up images of the scrap on the main screen. Close-up scans that her crew had been secretly taking for days. "They are wrong." She pointed to a twisted section of hull. "This alloy can repair itself. We have nothing like it on Earth." She pointed to a blackened engine core. "This reactor design is more efficient than anything we have ever imagined. It is also more efficient than anything the Concorde currently uses. They abandoned this technology thousands of years ago." She pointed to a weapons array. "I do not know what this is, but our computers think it can punch holes through dimensions." The room was silent. Everyone understood what she was saying. "The Concorde rules this galaxy because they have better technology," Alina continued. "They got that technology by conquering other species and taking their inventions. Then they destroyed those species, so no one could use those inventions against them." She smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. "But they kept the ships. And now they have given those ships to us." She stood up straight, her gray eyes sweeping across the room. "They called us primitive. They said we could not learn. They forgot that humanity did not become strong by being given things. We became strong by taking what others threw away and making it better." She activated a new file. The words Project Lazarus appeared on the screen. "We are going to take apart every piece of that scrap. We are going to learn every secret it holds. And then we are going to build something that will make the Concorde understand exactly how wrong they were about." Us Admiral Alina Vasquez looked out at the floating graveyard and saw what no alien could see. She saw the future. Within 72 hours, every engineer, scientist, and builder on Earth received the same encrypted message. The largest secret project in human history had begun. The Concorde moved on. They forgot about the primitive humans and their pile of garbage. They had empires to run and rebellions to crush. They did not know that in the shadows of that orbiting graveyard,
something was already taking shape.
Something that would change the galaxy forever. 3 years passed in silence. The Concorde had surveillance drones watching Earth's solar system. They watched the humans slowly take apart the scrap metal in orbit. They watched cargo ships carry pieces down to the planet's surface. They watched and reported that everything was normal. The primitive humans were doing exactly what the Velith had predicted. They were melting down the scrap for raw materials. The drones were not wrong. They simply could not see what was happening beneath the surface of Luna. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had not slept in 41 hours. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook from too much coffee. But she could not stop. Not when they were so close. The Lazarus shipyard stretched for 50 kilometers beneath the gray dust of Earth's moon. It had taken 2 years just to dig the caverns. Another year to install the equipment. Now finally, the real work was happening. While UKI walked through corridors filled with noise and light, welders threw sparks into the air. Engineers shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Robotic arms lifted pieces of metal that weighed more than houses. Everywhere she looked, humans were working, building, creating. She found Admiral Vasquez, standing on an observation platform, overlooking the main construction bay. The Admiral had aged in the past 3 years. More gray in her hair. More lines on her face. But her eyes were still sharp as knives. Dr. Vasquez said without turning around, "You have news?" Yuki stepped up beside her and looked down at what they were building. It was enormous. Even incomplete, it filled the construction bay like a sleeping giant. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals and designs. Pieces taken from a dozen different sources and somehow fitted together into something new. We finished the analysis of the Mroth hull plating, Yuki said. You were right. It repairs itself. Not just small damage. Major damage. We tested it by cutting a piece in half. Within 6 hours, it had grown back together. Vasquez nodded slowly. What about the power systems? That is why I am here. Yuki pulled out a small tablet and showed the Admiral a series of charts. The reactor cores the Concorde gave us are old. Very old. But they are also better than anything the Concorde currently uses. How is that possible? Yuki's tired face broke into a smile. Because the Concorde did not invent them. They took them from a species called the Vethkai. And when they were finished with the Vethkai, they destroyed them completely. They wiped out an entire civilization and stole their technology. She swiped to a new image. It showed a comparison between the old reactor design and modern Concorde vessels. The Vethkai reactors are 300% more efficient. They are also smaller and safer. The Concorde abandoned this technology because they could not control it. They did not understand how it worked, so they replaced it with designs they did understand. Inferior designs. Vasquez turned to look at her. Are you saying we can build better power systems than the Concorde? I am saying we already have. Yuki pointed down at the ship below. That vessel will have more power than a Concorde battle fleet. And that is not even the most exciting discovery. She led the Admiral to a side room filled with computers and holographic displays. Other scientists were there, all of them looking exhausted and excited at the same time. On the main display floated a strange piece of equipment that looked like a twisted ring of crystal and metal. We found this buried in one of the weapon platforms, Yuki explained. It took us 8 months to figure out what it does. It folds space, Vasquez frowned. Explain. The Concorde uses something called jump gates to travel between stars. They are expensive, difficult to build, and only work between fixed points. This device does something different. It creates a temporary hole in space itself. A ship using this technology could travel anywhere in the galaxy instantly. No gates, no fixed routes, complete freedom. The Admiral stared at the display for a long moment. The Concorde does not have this technology. They did. A species called the Hollow Ones invented it about 8,000 years ago. The Concorde found them, conquered them, and destroyed every record of their existence. They were afraid of what would happen if anyone else could travel freely through space. Yuki shook her head. They kept a few devices as trophies. They never thought anyone would figure out how they worked. Vasquez began to laugh. It was a quiet laugh at first, but it grew until tears streamed down her face. The other scientists watched her nervously. They had never seen the Admiral show this much emotion. They gave us a museum, Vasquez finally said, wiping her eyes. They gave us the collected achievements of every species they murdered, and they thought it was garbage. She straightened up and looked at the team with new energy in her eyes. What are we calling her? Yuki blinked. Calling what? The ship. Vasquez gestured toward the construction bay. She needs a name. The scientists looked at each other. They had been so focused on the technical problems that no one had thought about a name. We've been calling it Project Lazarus. One of them offered. Lazarus was a man who came back from the dead, Vasquez said. That is not what this is. This is not resurrection. This is revenge. She thought for a moment. Then she smiled. The Spite. We will call her the Spite, because that is what she is. A monument to everything the Concorde tried to destroy. A weapon built from pure defiance. The name spread through the shipyard within hours. Workers painted it on their tools. Engineers whispered it like a prayer. The Spite, their spite. Humanity's spite. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Concorde was busy with other matters. A coalition of enslaved species had started a rebellion. It was called the Hegemony War, and it had been raging for almost 3 decades. The Concorde was winning, of course. They always won. But the fighting demanded attention and resources. No one was watching humanity. No one noticed when the last piece of hull plating was welded into place. No one noticed when the Vethkai reactors hummed to life for the first time in 8,000 years. No one noticed when the Hollow Ones' space-folding device was successfully tested. The spite was complete. On the day of her first flight, Admiral Vasquez stood on the bridge and looked at her crew. They were young. They were scared. They were ready. In a few minutes, she said, we will do something no human has ever done. We will travel across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. We will show ourselves to a universe that thinks we do not matter. And we will begin the work of proving them wrong. She sat down in the captain's chair. Start the engines. The spite woke up. Her hull glowed with energy. The space-folding device activated, tearing a hole in reality itself, and then she was gone, leaving nothing behind, silence, and the fading glow of impossible technology. The most dangerous warship in the galaxy had been born from garbage. Now it was time to show the Concorde exactly what their gift had become. The Kethra Nebula was burning. Commander. Zorath of the Concorde's 7th Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the destruction with satisfaction. The nebula was beautiful in a terrible way. Clouds of purple and gold gas swirled around dying stars, and within those clouds, the last stronghold of the rebellion was falling apart. The rebels had fought hard for 30 years. They had united 93 different species under a single cause. They had won battles, destroyed outposts, and for a brief moment, they had made the Concorde afraid. But now it was ending. The 7th Fleet had 4,000 warships. The rebels had less than 200 left. Within a few hours, the war would be over. The Concorde would win, as they always won. The rebellious species would be punished. Some would be enslaved. Others would be erased from history entirely. Zorath was already thinking about his reward. Perhaps a system of his own. Perhaps a seat on the High Council. He had served the Concorde faithfully for 300 years. It was time for recognition. His tactical officer interrupted his thoughts. The young officer's face was pale, her voice shaking. Commander, there is something on sensors. Zorath turned with annoyance. What kind of something? A rebel ship? Destroy it. No, sir. Not rebel. The signature is ... unknown.
House.
She swallowed hard. It appeared directly in front of the fleet. It did not come through any jump gate. It just ... appeared. That was impossible. Nothing could travel through space without using the jump gates. Zorath moved to the sensor display, ready to tell his officer that she was reading the equipment wrong. Then he saw it. The ship was enormous. It was larger than his flagship, larger than any vessel in the 7th Fleet, larger than anything Zorath had ever seen in 3 centuries of service. Its hull was a strange patchwork of different designs. He recognized pieces of it. Velith reactor housings, Kethra weapon arrays, Marath hull plating, technologies from species that no longer existed, species that the Concorde had wiped from the galaxy, but the configuration was wrong. It was alien. It was impossible. It was human. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Spite. The voice came through on all frequencies, clear and calm. We are here to accept the Concorde's surrender. For a moment, no one on Zorath's bridge moved. Then someone laughed. It was nervous laughter, the kind that comes when reality stops making sense. Zorath found his voice. Human vessel, you are in Concorde space without authorization. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, you will be destroyed. The human's response was immediate. I do not think so. Zorath felt anger rising in his chest. Who did these primitives think they were? 1 ship against 4,000? The humans had been given garbage, and they had built a toy. A big toy, yes, but still just a toy. All ships, he commanded, target the human vessel. Full weapons. Destroy it. 4,000 warships opened fire at once. The space around the Spite filled with energy beams, missiles, and projectiles. It was enough firepower to crack a planet. It was enough to destroy a moon. It was not enough. The Spite's hull glowed. The self-repairing Roth plating absorbed impacts that would have vaporized any other ship. Energy weapons splashed against shields that bent the laws of physics. Missiles exploded harmlessly against barriers that should not have existed. And then the Spite fired back. Zorath did not understand what he was seeing. The weapons were not like anything in Concord records. Some fired beams of pure darkness that cut through ships like they were made of paper. Others launched projectiles that seemed to exist in multiple places at once, hitting dozens of targets simultaneously. One weapon did not fire anything at all. It simply made ships disappear, folding them into spaces where they could not survive. 17 seconds. That was all it took. When the firing stopped, the Seventh Fleet no longer existed. 4,000 warships reduced to floating debris and expanding clouds of gas. Zorath's flagship was the only vessel left intact. And that was only because the humans had chosen to spare it. The Admiral's voice came through again. Commander Zorath, you will take this message back to the Concord. Tell them what you saw today. Tell them that the species they dismissed as primitive has built something they cannot match. Tell them that the garbage they gave us has become their nightmare. Zorath could not speak. His skin had turned gray with fear. His crew stared at their screens in horror, unable to process what had just happened. Until Ambassador the Sorin, the human continued, that we said thank you for the gift. The Spite turned away from the shattered fleet and vanished, folding space around itself and disappearing as suddenly as it had arrived. The rebellion in the Kethra. Nebula did not end that day. The remaining rebel ships, witnessing the destruction of the Seventh Fleet, found new courage. They counterattacked. They won. News of the battles spread across the galaxy within hours. The footage was played on every screen, in every system, on every world. Billions of beings watched the impossible happen. A single ship, built by a species that had been dismissed as worthless, had destroyed an entire Concord fleet in less time than it took to brew a cup of tea. Ambassador Lexeron received the news in his private chambers on the Velith homeworld. He watched the recording 7 times, each time hoping to find some mistake. Some explanation that made sense. There was none. His communication screen activated. A human face appeared. A woman with dark skin and a smile that did not reach her eyes. Ambassador Lexeron, she said. I am humanity's new representative to the Concord. I believe we have some things to discuss. Lexeron's skin flickered through color so fast, it was almost painful to watch. Rage, fear, confusion, disbelief. How? He finally managed to say, How did you do this? The woman's smile widened. You gave us the answer yourself, Ambassador. You gave us the remains of every species you conquered. Every civilization you destroyed. Every technology you stole and forgot. She leaned closer to the screen. We did not forget. We learned. We built. We improved. She held up a small object. It took Thexorin a moment to recognize it. A fork. A simple eating utensil made from gleaming alien metal. Thank you for your generous gift, the human said. We have decided to return the favor. Consider the Seventh Fleet your eating utensils. The transmission ended. Thexorin sat alone in the darkness of his chambers for a long time. His skin had stopped flickering. It was now a solid color that no Velith had displayed in thousands of years. The color of terror the galaxy had changed. The humans had changed it, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Concord responded the only way it knew how. 12 grand armadas gathered from across the galaxy. 90,000 warships representing the combined military strength of every species that had sworn loyalty to the Concord. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. It was meant to send a message that could not be ignored. Ambassador the Sorin himself took command of the operation. He stood on the bridge of the Judgment of Stars, the largest vessel the Velith had ever built, and watched his fleet form up around him. The sight should have filled him with confidence. Instead, he felt something cold in his chest that would not go away. Fear. He was afraid of humans. The thought made him sick. Set course for the human system, he commanded. Maximum speed. We will show these primitives what happens to species that challenge the Concord. The fleet moved through jump gates, crossing vast distances in moments. When they emerged in human space, they found exactly what they expected. Earth floating peacefully in the distance. A handful of small defense stations? A few dozen ships that looked like toys compared to Concord vessels. What they did not find was the spite. "Where is it?" Thixarin demanded. "Where is their weapon?" His tactical officers searched every corner of the system. They scanned moons and asteroids. They probed the depths of space around the local star. The spite was not there. A transmission came through from Earth. A different human this time. It's an older woman with silver hair and a calm expression. "Ambassador Thixarin," she said, "I am President Chen of the United Earth Government. I assume you are here about the incident at Kethra Nebula." Thixarin's skin flushed red with anger. "Incident? You destroyed 4,000 ships. You murdered millions of loyal Concord soldiers. We defended ourselves against an aggressive fleet that refused to communicate peacefully." The human president showed no emotion. "We have no quarrel with the Concord. We simply wish to be treated as equals." Equals. Thixarin nearly choked on the word. "You are not our equals. You will never be our equals. You are insects that we will crush beneath our feet." Cut the transmission and turned to his officers. "Destroy everything. The planet. The stations. Leave nothing alive." The Grand Armadas began their attack on Earth, but even as the first weapons fired, reports started coming in from across the galaxy. Reports that changed everything. The spite had appeared at the slave markets of Vorath Prime. It had destroyed the orbital platforms and broadcast a simple message. "You are free." The spite had appeared at the prison moons of Tereth. It had disabled the guard stations and opened every cell door. The spite had appeared at the industrial complexes of Kethra, where conquered species labored in chains. The chains were now broken. The overseers were now dead. Admiral Vasquez was not defending. She was attacking everywhere else. Thixarin received each report with growing horror. The human ship was moving faster than any vessel in history. It would appear, strike, and vanish before anyone could respond. It was not fighting a war. It was starting a revolution. "We did not build this ship for ourselves." Vasquez broadcast on every frequency the galaxy could receive. "We built it for all of you. Every species the Concord has crushed. Every civilization they have enslaved. Every people they have tried to erase. Rise up. Fight back. You are not alone anymore." The effect was immediate on 100 different worlds. Species that had surrendered generations ago suddenly remembered what it felt like to resist. Slaves turned on their masters. Workers sabotaged factories. Soldiers who had been forced to serve the Concord threw down their weapons and joined the growing rebellion. The Grand Armadas found themselves with a terrible choice: stay and destroy Earth, or return to defend an empire that was falling apart. Thixarin chose to stay. He ordered his fleet to continue the attack, but half his commanders disobeyed. They broke away and jumped back to their home systems, desperate to protect their own worlds from the spreading chaos. Even with half his fleet gone, Thixarin had enough ships to destroy Earth many times over. But something strange was happening. His weapons were hitting nothing. Earth's defense stations, which should have been destroyed in the first volley, were still operating. His sensors were giving him false readings. His communications were filled with static. He did not understand that human technology was not just about weapons. It was about information. While the spite fought across the galaxy, a network of hidden satellites had been jamming, confusing, and misdirecting the Concord fleet since its arrival. Humans had learned many things from the scrap they were given. They had learned that sometimes the best weapon was not the biggest gun. It was the ability to make your enemy blind and deaf while you decided what to do with them. Days passed. The Grand Armadas accomplished nothing. Earth remained unharmed. In every hour, more reports came in of systems falling to rebellion, of Concord forces being overwhelmed by species they had oppressed for centuries. Thixarin realized he was losing. Not just this battle, everything. Then his sensors detected something that made his blood freeze. The spite was coming. It had finished its work across the galaxy and was now heading straight for the Concord capital world. "She is insane," his tactical officer whispered. "The home fleet has 200,000 ships. Even she cannot defeat that." Soren said nothing. He was no longer sure what the humans could or could not do. Everything he had believed about them had been wrong. He abandoned the attack on Earth and ordered his remaining ships to follow the Spite. If the human vessel was heading for the heart of the Concord, then that was where this war would end, as his fleet jumped away from the human system. Vexoran looked back at the small blue planet one last time. Such a tiny world. Such a young species. How had they done this? How had garbage and primitives brought the greatest power in the galaxy to its knees? He did not know, but he was about to find out. Admiral Vasquez. They stood on the bridge of the Spite and watched the stars blur around her as the ship folded space. Her crew was exhausted. They had been fighting without rest for weeks, jumping from system to system, freeing the oppressed and destroying the oppressors. But they were not done yet. "How long until we reach the Concord capital?" she asked. 6 hours, her navigator replied. 6 hours until the final battle. 6 hours until humanity showed the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. The Concord had given humanity scrap. Humanity had built hope. Now it was time to deliver the final message, the Concord. Homeworld had never been attacked in 12,000 years of galactic rule. No enemy had ever come close enough to see the shining cities and endless gardens of the capital planet. The home fleet made sure of that. 200,000 warships formed a sphere around the world, weapons ready, shields raised, crews prepared to die defending the heart of their electee. Civilization Ambassador Vexoran arrived with his remaining forces and took his place in the defensive formation. His skin had not stopped flickering since he left Earth. Fear and anger and desperation chased each other. Across his face in waves of color that made his officers uncomfortable to watch. But he was not alone in his fear. The entire fleet was afraid. They had all seen the footage from Kethra Nebula. They had all heard the reports of rebellions spreading across the galaxy. They knew that something terrible was coming, and then it arrived. The Spite dropped out of folded space directly in front of the home fleet. It hung in the darkness, like a nightmare-given form, its patchwork hull reflecting the light of the Concord. Sun.1 ship against 200,000. Vexoran opened a communication channel. His voice was steady, though his hearts were pounding. G in his chest. Human vessel. You are surrounded. You cannot win this battle. Surrender now, and we will grant your species a quick death. Admiral Vasquez's response came immediately. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. We did not come here to win, Ambassador. We came here to show you something. The Spite began to change. Panels on its hull shifted and moved. Hidden systems activated, emerging from compartments that had been sealed since the ship's construction. And suddenly, every sensor in the Concord fleet detected weapon signatures, thousands of them. Each signature was different. Each one represented a technology from a species that no longer existed. Weapons that the Concord had stolen and forgotten. Weapons that the species they had murdered had created to defend themselves. Weapons that had failed against the Concord's overwhelming numbers, but were now united in a single vessel. You gave us the remains of everyone you murdered, Vasquez said. Every species you erased, every civilization you silenced. We found their weapons. We found their defenses. We found their dreams. Her voice grew harder. The Vethkai, who created power systems that could have changed the galaxy. The Hollow Ones, who discovered how to fold space itself. The Murath, whose ships could heal themselves. The Kethra, whose weapons could cut through dimensions. 93 species in total. 93 peoples that you destroyed because you were afraid of what they might become. The Spite's weapons locked onto targets across the home fleet. 200,000 ships found themselves in the crosshairs of technologies they had thought extinct. We put them back together, Vasquez continued. We took their broken pieces and made them whole again. This ship is not just a weapon. It is a memorial. It carries the legacy of everyone you tried to erase. She paused, and now they are going to say goodbye. Vexoran screamed for his fleet to attack. 200,000 ships opened fire at once. The space around the Spite became a wall of energy and metal, enough destruction to burn a hole through a star. The Spite did not dodge. It did not run. It advanced. The self-repairing hull absorbed damage faster than it could be inflicted. Shields bent physics in ways that made Concorde sensors give impossible readings. And through it all, the Spite's weapons fired without stopping. Ships vanished as space folded around them. Ships melted as energy beams cut through armor like it was not there. Ships exploded as projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions struck them from angles. That should not have been possible. But the Spite was not just destroying the fleet. It was cutting a path. Moving forward. Heading straight for the Concorde homeworld itself. Daxorin watched his forces crumble. He watched ships that had served the Concorde for centuries die in moments. He watched the impossible happening before his eyes. What do you want? He screamed into the communication channel. What will make you stop? The answer came not from Vasquez, but from the Spite itself. The ship had reached the edge of the home fleet. The path behind it was filled with debris and death. Ahead, the Concorde capital world floated into, but the Spite did not fire on the planet. It simply hung there, weapons still glowing, a promise of destruction that had not yet been fulfilled. We want 3 things, Vasquez said. First, the Concorde will release every enslaved species. Every prison will be opened. Every chain will be broken. Scorna's skin had gone pale. And the second, the Concorde will share its technology with all species equally. No more hoarding. No more control. The galaxy belongs to everyone. And the third, Vasquez smiled. It was the first time she had smiled during the entire battle. Equal membership. For humanity. For every species that has been denied a voice, the Concorde will become a true council of equals, or it will cease to exist. Silence filled the communication channel. The remaining Concorde ships hung motionless in space, waiting for orders. The planet below waited for judgment. Daxorin thought about 12,000 years of power. He thought about all the species his people had crushed to build their empire. He thought about the garbage they had given to humanity, what humanity had built from it. He thought about the fear he had felt since the moment the Spite first appeared. And he realized something. He was tired of being afraid. The Concorde accepts your terms, he said. Across the galaxy, the words echoed on every screen. Every speaker, every transmission. The war was over. Not because humanity had conquered the Concorde, but because humanity had offered them a choice, and for the first time in 12,000 years, the Concorde had chosen peace. Years later, a monument was built on the reformed capital world. It was a sculpture of the Spite, rendered in metals from 100 different planets. Beneath it, a plaque carried words in every language the galaxy had ever known. They called us primitive. They gave us their garbage. They forgot the oldest truth in the universe, that those who have nothing will always find a way to build everything. Humanity did not ask for respect. We forged it. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka stood before the monument on the day it was unveiled. She had been Dr. Tanaka once, the woman who had built the Spite in a cavern beneath the moon. Now she represented humanity in the new Galactic Council. A young Belith child tugged at their parent's arm and pointed at the statue. Were humans really that scary? The parent looked at the monument. Their skin flickered with colors that were hard to read. Shame, perhaps. Or gratitude. Or both. No, little one, they said. They were that creative. And that made them the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Above them, orbiting the reformed capital, the Spite stood watch. It was no longer a weapon of war. It was a reminder. A promise. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Scrap could become legend. The dismissed could become powerful. And those who underestimated humanity would always regret it. Always.